I'm Zainab Badawi. I am your host for this afternoon's event. It's the first day of this Women in Government and Politics conference. We are here to discuss something which is beginning to get a bit of attention, but still requires a great deal of work, which is the role of women. As somebody who's worked in the media for many years and following the progress or otherwise of women, it's something which I know is urgently needed.
Greetings, my dear fellow women, special invited guests, students, and all present. It is indeed my greatest honor and privilege to address such a worthy and veritable group of women. I believe this conference is taking place at such a time where more women are needed than ever before in elected and appointed political offices.
The first conversations that the Winnie Njemide series team had just seemed to run away with itself, and the response was indeed encouraging. We've started small because we thought that in order to actually talk about the serious issues, we should simply have a few strong voices. And so this afternoon, I congratulate the women who are here with us to begin this conversation. The truth is, we have no idea where this conversation will go. But there is a firm hope in my heart that, as I said on the video, it will not just be a whisper, it will not just be a ripple, but it will become a resounding noise. The specific hope is that as you break out into your various sessions, we will be able to put together a manifesto which will, with all our help, be distributed to heads of government so that they begin to understand what ideas we have, because it is difficult, I would suppose, for people who are removed from the issues that we discuss to make the issues around us important. So we must get our views to them. And these views will be captured in a manifesto, which we're working on very graciously with some prestigious institutions, including the Oxford University. So it is serious business that we are gathered here for over the next 2 days.
It is my belief that any government that fails to pay heed to the advancement of women issues in the 21st century and beyond is pushing against the tide and limiting the potential of 50% of its population to contribute to human progress. The number of women in government is rising across the world, and support for this trend must be sustained.
This event, what you're doing, my sister, is audacious. It's ambitious in its intent. What is the intent? The intent is to politically, spiritually empower women of African descent, not just in Africa, but across the four corners of the globe. Am I right or wrong? And what she has set out to do is to sew a golden thread through every country, every city, every countryside in Africa and across the globe to say, we are a family of Africans. And within that family of Africans, this is her words, not mine, I want black women to be strong.
I told this man, you know what? I want you to take my papers, and I'm standing as a member of parliament of this constituency. He said, no, you're lying. I was like, no, I'm not lying. I'm serious. I want to be a member of parliament. I gave him my qualification papers, and I told him, you know, I'm above the age of 18. I'm a citizen of Uganda, and the Constitution says if you're above 18, you're capable of being a politician in this country. So I took over the position of my dad, and I ran his projects.
I would like to know, how do women rise through the civil service?
As soon as you come in, you follow the trend of rising with the examination. So there's no barrier to women. What makes more women fall out, like I said, is because they don't continue in service because of other pressures. You don't have enough support to continue, so they drop out. Maybe they start at grade level 8, and then they drop out when they are becoming senior at grade level 12, 13, and 14.
So how did you rise then, despite the fact that you had how many children?
I worked in the hospital. We have a crèche. I also have a good family support.
Yeah.
So those supports, you know,
Are very
help you
important.
to be able to go through.
It took a lot of struggle for my father to send me to school, being the first girl. I succeeded, but that notwithstanding, I was forced to be married after my HSC at the age of just a little over 19. I married when I was 19, had my first daughter when I was a little over 20. I stopped school because my husband, who was a professor, but being a northerner, did not want me to continue schooling. He wanted me to be a full-time housewife. But I insisted, just like my brother said, I demanded that I had to go to school. It was very important. I was very comfortable. To work again was a tug of war. In fact, I had to temporarily leave the marriage just for me to be allowed to work. Because I said, why did I go to school if I cannot be able to practice what I learned?
There are 5 areas that we should be addressing our minds to. The first area is advocacy. The second is succession planning. The third is employment. The fourth, appointment. And the fifth, election. So how can we increase the numbers of women through these 5 areas? The next thing on the agenda is for all the participants to start discussions around just 2 of these areas.
Good morning. So glad we have the luxury of another day and some wonderful new guests as well. And we've got unexpected guests like MP Keith Vass. Please stand up and be acknowledged.
Around the globe, the widest gender gap can be found in the world of politics. Only 20% of leadership roles are occupied by women.
It's nice to be with you all today, and it's starting to feel less like a conference and more like a gathering of sisters and a gathering of friends. I would just like to salute the women who are here. They are drawn from about 22 countries in Africa. So even though our numbers seem small today, this is an extremely significant gathering. And this is so in particular because yesterday what I came to find is that each woman here in her own capacity can deliver a keynote address.
As we strive to make up the numbers of women in leadership, in politics and governance, and to create access and opportunities, we need to also ensure that we have enhancement of our skills and abilities in a bid to ensure that we have even more to offer than is expected of us. And I say this again very, very seriously. It is critical for all women going up the ladders of leadership to remember to turn around and pull 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as many women as possible up the ladder behind them. It is critical.
You have to be aware of that. You can put laws in place, you can put quotas in place, and they are there, but then you get another set of elected officials, another set of judges come along, and they'll decide that that law or that quota is not any good. So we have to be vigilant that advocacy is not a one-time deal. Advocacy is not for a season. It is a lifetime commitment. Thank you.
As we strategize to increase their numbers, I want to plead that we leave space to make sure that instead of bringing in new resolutions, we implement what has been said. So that's my second point. Third point, I want to say that in my life, what I've realized is that women do not recognize that they are very powerful. You see, especially the African woman. And I think that we need to raise consciousness of women. Who socializes? It's the woman who brings up the child, who gives the value system, who will tell a child, be confident in yourself, whether the child is a boy or a girl.
I think one of the things we could try and think about in the future is how can we enforce quotas, which I think are clearly an important thing, but doing it in a way that still connects people to an electoral base that means that when they get into Parliament, they're able to say. So let me give the example of Rwanda very quickly before wrapping up. You know, what a lot of people would say as a critique of Rwanda would be, it's fantastic there are so many women there, but actually when it comes to some of the big decisions, women's issues aren't put on the front foot, they're on the back burner. And that translate that from high levels of women in Parliament to better policies in terms of women more generally, you need something else. And the figures that we were talking about earlier for the UK and US are interesting on this, right? The UK and US have done far more than most African countries in terms of promoting, you know, or trying to combat, for example, gender-based violence. There are very few good gender-based violence laws on the books in Africa. And yet female representation in the British Parliament is tiny.
23%.
In Congress, it's shameful. So there's not always a direct correlation between the number of women in the lower house
and laws that are passed that are...
So I think it's a two-step process. First, use quotas, increase female representation. But second, think about the sources of influence that people will have within Parliament and work to strengthen that.
One of the things we do have to do as we do all this work is we've also got to get to the next generation of young men who are coming up. And to get to them, responding also to what you're talking about, the issue is mentorship.
Ramesh said there is an amazing conference going on. And can I say to the 4 speakers that we have heard, I have never heard 4 such inspirational speakers in the 26 years that I've been in Parliament. And now I wish I was a woman. To have actually heard these magnificent, amazing speeches from all over the world.
I've really learned a lot of things from very different politicians in Africa. Which that I didn't even know, the mentors didn't tell me, but I've really learned a lot. Whereby I've been motivated by the conference. I've really known that we women can really fight in politics, and we can really fight for our rights. We are not left backwards, we are not left, we actually are not supposed to be we are supposed to be proactive, not to lag behind, not to sit behind. So this conference has really taught me that. And I believe that when I go back to my country, Uganda, I'll do exactly what the women in this conference have spoken, because the women here are very strong.
I think that there's quite a bit of energy and excitement that has been brought to the subject matter. And the next step can only be trying to get the message to the ears of those who would like to hear the conversations. So that is the next step. But as to where we are now, the deliberations are full of energy. A lot of ideas are being dissected. One of the things that was really vital that I heard today was the fact that there have been so many policies, so many communiques, so many laws, and the suggestion that we should go back and review what already exists and then draw from that and use that going forward. And the breakout sessions that are going on as we speak are addressing the laws and the things that have been said before. There's no point reinventing the wheel. We don't think that there are new things to be said. Perhaps it's just a question of rearticulating them and then presenting them.
What I'd like to do now is ask one representative from each group to come and join us on the stage.
I have learned a lot, more than I knew. The learning process is forever. So I've learned new things, new ideas that I'll take home with me. And in fact, my sister, Senator Nkechi, and I were already talking of how to replicate this kind of forum at home. So that we give the information.
That's great.
Yes.
We focused initially on the civil service, saying that as regards the civil service, we thought that a temporary system of quotas was important. But we liked the minister's term this morning of parity, a parity scheme. And we felt that getting the initial numbers into the civil service for those who chose to go that route, once we had reached an optimal number, critical mass, we could then start focusing more on looking at it more as a parity scheme.
We're going to produce two different documents. One is actually going to be a report on the state of women in African politics and government today. So that will bring together a lot of the information you've heard into a short, concise format. But we're also going to produce a manifesto that's going to hopefully integrate all of these different points and be sensitive where there are areas of debate to those areas of debate. And that's going to be something that we produce over the next few weeks, and then that we're actually going to launch that as a report. And the idea is that that's not just going to be a report that sits there, but a report that we actually take out and take to governments. And hopefully, maybe in future meetings of this conference, who knows, in Africa and elsewhere, we'll be able to look back and say, okay, of those things that we suggested in the manifesto, how many of these have we achieved? What is still to be done?